Hello dear learners, welcome to this SWAYAM NPTEL online course on inclusive education. I am Dr. Umakant Prasad, an assistant professor from Department of Education, Binay Bhavan, Vishwabharati Shanti Niketan. This is week 4 and today we are going to discuss lecture number 21, that is curriculum adaptation. During this lecture, we will discuss meaning and concept of curriculum adaptation, levels of curriculum adaptation, types of curriculum adaptation and principles for effective curriculum adaptation. With the enactment of 86th Constitutional Amendment Act 2002 and the Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009, India has reaffirmed its commitment to ensuring quality education for all, including children with disabilities. Aligned with international frameworks such as United Nations Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities 2008, the Salamanca Statement and Framework of Action 1994 and the Sustainable Development Goals 2030, inclusive education has emerged as a guiding principle of educational reform. However, inclusion goes beyond mere physical presence in the classroom. True inclusion requires active participation and meaningful engagement of all the learners regardless of their abilities or disabilities. This calls for curriculum adaptation, a purposeful process of modifying or adjusting content, teaching strategies and assessment methods, learning materials and the classroom environment to accommodate diverse learning needs of all the learners. Curriculum adaptation acknowledges that every learner brings unique strengths, challenges, learning styles and backgrounds. A rigid one-size-fits-all curriculum fails to meet these varied needs. As highlighted in the National Curriculum Framework 2005, inclusive curricula must be child-centered, adaptable and sensitive to the needs of differently able learners. Curriculum adaptation thus is not just a technical modification, but a transformative educational approach. It includes both accommodations which supports access without altering learning goals and modification which adjust learning expectation for students with significant challenges. It enables educators to create learning environments that are equitable, respectful of diversity and conducive to the success and holistic development of every child. Generally, adaptation includes accommodation and modifications. Accommodation and modification are the two pillars of curriculum adaptation in inclusive education system. In an inclusive classroom, students come with diverse learning needs, abilities and challenges. To ensure equitable participation and meaningful learning for all, curriculum adaptation becomes essential. Two fundamental strategies used in adapting curriculum to suit the needs of all the learners, including learners with disabilities, are accommodations and modifications. Though often used interchangeably, these two terms have distinct meanings and purposes in the domain of inclusive education. Let us try to discuss accommodation, that is considered equal access without changing standards. Accommodation refers to the changes made in the input and output processes of learning, that is how a student receives information and how he or she demonstrates what he or she has learned without altering the content, learning expectations or assessment criteria. These adaptations are meant to provide students with disabilities to access to the same curriculum and academic standards as their peers. According to NCERT 2015, accommodation refers to adjusting assessments, materials, curriculum or classroom environment to facilitate the learning needs of all students, so the students can achieve their learning goals. Examples of accommodations are as follows: use of audiobooks, audio tapes or electronic text for students with reading difficulties, access to speech to text or text to speech software for students with writing or visual impairments, provision of graphic organizer and visual aids to support note taking and comprehension, allowing use of computers or tablets with features like spell check, word prediction or idea generators, offering grades assignments while keeping learning outcomes constant, and using alternative modes of instruction such as learning by doing, braille, video lessons and tactile learning tools. In essence, accommodation aims to remove learning barriers without lowering the academic bar. Modification, that is considered changing what is taught or expected. Modification involves altering the curricular content, learning outcomes or evaluation criteria to match the functional level of certain students, especially those with multiple disabilities, cognitive impairments or intellectual disabilities who may not be able to access the standard curriculum even with accommodations. Modification may involve simplifying lessons, changing the number or complexity of learning objectives or substituting alternative activities or assessments that are better suited to the student's abilities. Modifications are generally considered a timely intervention rather than a long term or permanent solution and may be applied selectively across different subjects and time periods. Examples of modifications are as follows: reducing the amount or complexity of content to be learned, replacing academic tasks with functional or life skill based tasks, substituting a second language subject with work experience or vocational training, and changing the assessment format or grading criteria to better suit a student's learning profile. Modifications are essential when the goal is not just access but achievable learning tailored to an individual's pace and capability. Let us try to understand the difference between accommodation and modification with the help of this table. Accommodation refers to the changes made in the teaching strategies, assessment and evaluation methods, support and services required by a student to access curriculum or to demonstrate learning, while modifications are referred to the changes made in the learning outcomes which are generally below the age or grade level in which the student is placed. Accommodation don't alter the expected learning outcomes for the grade level for the given curriculum, whereas modification alters the grade level expectations on a given curriculum for the student. Accommodations can be done at the infrastructural, environment, organizational, academic or evaluation or other levels, whereas modifications are limited to mostly academic and modified program may also require accommodations. Accommodations are done for a student of any grade, whereas modifications are done mostly for a student in the elementary grade. Accommodations made for a student usually benefits to all other learners in the class. However, modifications has limited applications for grading purposes. Accommodation reduces or removes the barriers in assessing the education and increase the opportunities for the success, whereas modification changes the expected outcomes of learning for an individual. The changes may be in the complexity or in the number of outcomes. Let us try to discuss the characteristics of curriculum adaptations. Effective curriculum adaptations are purposeful modification that ensures all learners, especially those with disabilities, can access and meaningfully engage with the curriculum in inclusive classrooms. A useful framework for identifying effective adaptation is the flow principle. F stands for fit in, that is fit into the existing classroom environment without disrupting the overall instructional flow. L stands lend themselves to meeting the unique and diverse learning needs of individual students. O stands for optimize comprehension and engagement for every learner through appropriate scaffolding. W stands for work in harmony with the planned instructional activities and learning objectives. These characteristics ensure that adaptations are not isolating but integrated and supportive of inclusive pedagogical practices. Levels of curriculum adaptation. Curriculum adaptations occur at three interrelated levels, that is curricular, instructional and ecological. Each level targeting a specific aspect of the teaching learning process. First one is curricular adaptations, that is related to what is taught. Curriculum adaptations focus on modifying the content and learning objectives. Content may be simplified, reduced or based on learner's cognitive or developmental level. It may include additional components such as communication, social, emotional or motor skills, either embedded within the general curriculum or as a parallel alternative such as functional curricular for life skills. It aims to maintain the core intent of the curriculum while enhancing relevance and accessibility. The second level is instructional adaptation, that is related to how it is taught and demonstrated. It involves changing the delivery of instruction, that is input, and expression of learning, that is output. This adjustment may include modality, that is visual, tactile or auditory, complexity and pace of instruction, quantity and repetition of material, alternative formats for demonstrating understanding, that is oral responses instead of written tests. The third level is ecological adaptations, that is related to where, when and with whom learning occurs. It concerns with the physical, temporal and social context of learning, which includes changing in location, that is peaceful or resource rich settings, adjustment to make schedule, that is extended time or flexible breaks, and peer grouping or staff support, that is one-on-one support or buddy systems. These levels operate collectively to reduce barriers and foster participation for all learners. Let us try to discuss the significance of curriculum adaptations. Curriculum adaptations are essential in actualizing the principle of inclusive education as anticipated in key global and national mandates such as United Nations Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities 2006, National Education Policy 2020 and Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016. Their significance lies in facilitating access to meaningful learning for all students, including those with disabilities, providing regional level accommodations without compromising the integrity of the curriculum, enhancing educational equity by ensuring that each learner receives the support needed to succeed, enabling active participation, fostering a sense of belonging and shared learning experiences, and promoting quality education through inclusive pedagogical approaches tailored to diverse learning profiles. Let us try to discuss the principles for effective curriculum adaptations. To ensure that adaptations uphold the values of inclusion and educational equality, it should be guided by the following principles. First one is preservation of core concepts. The fundamental learning outcomes and conceptual integrity of the curriculum must be maintained. Adaptations should enhance rather than dilute learning, ensuring all students are exposed to the essential ideas. Holistic and compensatory learning. Supplementary activities must offer a comprehensive and integrative view of the topic. reinforcing understanding through multiple perspectives and modalities. These activities should compensate for barriers while maintaining alignment with classroom goals. Dual purpose modifications. Instructional changes should not only support learners with disabilities but also benefit all students, creating a universally designed learning environment. Adaptation should be motivational and engaging, promoting inclusive participation and peer collaboration. Let us try to discuss the types of curriculum adaptations. Curriculum adaptations can be broadly categorized into general adaptations and specific adaptations. General adaptations include proactive changes that address recurring activities and routines, for example, including visual schedules, peer tutorial system or a standard use of assistive technologies. Specific adaptations include tailored, time-limited modifications for a particular lesson or activity or unit, designed to meet immediate learning needs or challenges in a specific instructional context. The types of curriculum adaptation also may be discussed by taking following points. First one is input, that is diversifying the delivery of information. Input refers to the methods and materials used to present information to students. Adapting the inputs ensures that content is accessible to learners with various sensory abilities, processing skills and learning preferences. This adaptation focuses on how of teaching. It moves beyond the traditional lecture format to incorporate a multisensory approach. By presenting information through various channels, educators can cater to visual, auditory, kinesthetic and tactile learners. This aligns with the principle of universal design for learning, which advocates for providing multiple means of representation. For example, visual supports. Using visual aids such as charts, graphs, diagrams and videos to supplement verbal instruction. For a student with an auditory processing disorder, a visual timeline of historical events can be more impactful than a lecture. Auditory supports. Providing audiobooks for students with dyslexia or reading difficulties, a student can listen to a chapter of a novel instead of struggling with decoding the text, allowing them to focus on comprehension and analysis. Tactile and kinesthetic learning, incorporating hands-on activities and manipulatives. In a science class, instead of just reading about circuits, students can build their own using batteries, wires and bulbs. For a math concept like fractions, a student can use fraction styles or even food items to understand the relationship between parts and a whole. Technology integration, utilizing interactive whiteboards, educational applications and text-to-speech software to present information in an engaging and accessible manner. Second one is output, that is broadening the avenue of expression. Output adaptations alter the way students are expected to demonstrate their knowledge and understanding. This acknowledges that traditional written responses are not the only nor always for most effective way for a student to show what they know. This adaptation provides students with choices in how they express their learning, thereby assessing their content knowledge rather than their ability to conform to a specific format. It empowers students by allowing them to leverage their strengths. For example, verbal responses, allowing a student with dysgraphia, that is learning disability that affects writing, to answer question orally or participate in a Socratic seminar instead of writing an essay. Projects and presentations, giving students the option to create a diorama, a video, a podcast or a PowerPoint presentation to demonstrate their understanding of a historical period, scientific concept or a piece of literature. Performance-based assessment, assessing a student's understanding of a play by having them perform a scene rather than writing a literary analysis. Use of technology, permitting a student to use speech to text software, word processors with spell check and grammar assistance or concept mapping software to organize their thoughts and present their ideas. Next one is size of the content, that is adjusting the volume of learning. Size of the content adaptations involve modifying the number of items which a student is expected to learn or to complete. This is particularly beneficial for students who may feel overwhelmed by the amount of information or the length of assignments. The emphasis is on quality over quantity, ensuring that the student masters the most critical elements of the curriculum. For example, reduced number of problems. In a math assignment, a student might be required to complete only the even numbered problems as long as those problems still cover the range of skill being taught. Shorter assignment, a student might be asked to write a 1-page report instead of 5-page report, focusing on the key arguments and evidence. Fewer vocabulary words. When introducing a new unit, a student with a memory related disability might be responsible for learning 5 key vocabulary words instead of a list of 20. The next one is time, that is providing flexibility in pacing and duration. Time adaptations involve altering the time allotted for learning, completing tasks or taking assignments. This is crucial for students who require more time to process information, formulate responses or manage their workload. This accommodation recognizes that the pace of learning is not uniform for all learners. Providing additional time can reduce anxiety and allow students to demonstrate their true understanding without the pressure of an ticking clock. For example, extended time, allowing the student to have time and a half or double extended time to complete a test or a major project. Breaking down assignments, dividing a large project into a smaller, more manageable chunks with individual deadlines. Flexible deadlines, offering some flexibility due dates for assignments, particularly for students with medical conditions or executive functioning challenges. Pacing instruction, adjusting the pace of a lesson to ensure all students have adequate time to grasp new concepts before moving on. The fifth one is difficulty level accommodation, that is related to scaffolding for success. Difficulty level as an accommodation involves providing supports that help a student to access the same grade level content as their peers. The fundamental task remains the same, but the student is given tool to overcome specific challenges. This type of adaptation focuses on providing a strategic assistance to bridge skill gaps without altering the learning objectives. It is about providing the right level of support at the right time. For example, providing a word bank. In a fill in the blank worksheet, a student might be given a list of possible answers to choose from. Graphic organizer, providing a partially completed outline or a graphic organizer to help the student to structure their thought for a writing assignment. Use of a calculator, allowing a student who struggle with basic computation to use a calculator for a math test, that is assessing higher level problem solving skills. Highlighting key information, highlighting the most important sentences or phrases in a text to guide a student reading and comprehension. The sixth one is difficulty level modification, that is adjusting the core task. Difficulty level as a modification involves simplifying the task or curriculum itself. The learning expectations is different from that of general student population. This modification is implemented when a student is not yet able to master the grade level content even with accommodations. The goal is to provide a meaningful and challenging learning experiences at the student's instructional level. For example, simplifying reading materials, providing a student with a text on the same topic but a lower reading level. Altered assignment. While the rest of the class is writing a comparative essays on two historical figures, a student with significant cognitive disabilities might be asked to create a poster with picture and simple sentences about one of those figures. Different math problems. In a math class where students are working on multi-step algebraic equations, a student might work on single step equations or pre-algebraic concepts. The seventh type of curriculum adaptation is degree of participation, that is fostering active and meaningful involvement. Degree of participation adaptations adjust the extent to which a student is actively involved in a task. The goal is to ensure that every student is a contributing member of the learning community even if his or her level of participation differs. This adaptation is about creating opportunities for all students to be engaged and feel a sense of belonging. It moves away from passive observation to active, even though sometimes modified involvement. For example, shared role in group work. In a science experiment, one student might be responsible for reading the instructions, another for gathering the materials, another for conducting the experiment, and a student with physical disabilities might be designated data recorder using assistive technology. Active listening roles. During a class discussion, a student who is non-verbal might be asked to use a pre-programmed communication device to share their opinion or use thumbs up or down to indicate agreement or disagreement. Modified roles in presentations. During a group presentation, a student with anxiety might be responsible for creating the visual aids while their peers do the public speaking. The next type is level of support, that is tailoring assistance to individual needs. Level of support adaptations involve increasing the amount of assistance provided to a student to help them to stay on task, to understand concepts and to complete assignments. This adaptation recognizes that some students require more direct guidance and reinforcement to succeed. The support can come from various sources and should be gradually fed as the student develops greater independence. For example, peer tutorial. Pairing a student with classmates who can provide support and clarification during independent work time. Paraeducator support. Having a paraeducator work with a small group of students to reteach a concept or provide prompting and encouragement. Teacher check-ins. Implementing frequent check-ins with a student to monitor their progress, answer questions and provide immediate feedback. Visual prompts. Using visual cues such as checklist or a picture schedule to help a student to stay organized and follow a routine. The next one is alternative goals, that is individualized learning outcomes. Alternative goals are adaptations where a student works on individualized learning objectives within the context of the general education classroom and curriculum. These modifications is typically for students with significant disabilities while they participate in the same classroom activities as their peers. Their learning goals are different and are aligned with their IEP. For example, functional skill in a general education setting. During a cooking class where students are learning to follow a complex recipe, a student with alternative goals might be working on life skills such as learning to identify different kitchen utensils or spreading butter on bread. Social skills in an academic context. While the class is engaged in a debate, a student with an alternative goal might be working on taking turns into conversation or making eye contact with their peers. Communication goals. During a language art lesson, a student might be using their argumentative and alternative communication device to make a request or comment on the story being read. The next type of curriculum adaptation is substitute curriculum, that is providing a different path to learning. Substitute curriculum is the most intensive level of adaptation where a student is taught a different curriculum from their peers. This is typically reserved for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. This modification acknowledges that the general education curriculum may not be appropriate or meaningful for some students. A substitute curriculum focuses on functional academic skills, life skills and vocational training that will prepare the student for life after school. For example, functional academics, instead of learning algebra, a student might learn functional math skills such as telling time, counting money and budgeting. Life skill curriculum, a student might receive direct instruction in areas such as personal hygiene, cooking, cleaning and using public transportation. Vocational training, a high school student might spend part of their day in a work study program to develop job skills in a community setting. In conclusion, we can say curriculum adaptation is a dynamic and individualized process that requires careful consideration of each student's unique strengths, needs and goals. The effective implementation of these adaptations is both an art and a science, demanding a deep understanding of pedagogy, a commitment to equity and a collaborative spirit among educators, families and students themselves. By embracing this comprehensive framework of adaptations, educators can move beyond simply including students in the classroom to truly empowering them to learn, grow and thrive. There are some references here. Thank you.